and it's beginning and you feel like it's slipping very quickly, or you weren't prepared for it, you weren't ready, and you get stressed out. They weren't stressed in Ramadan. Ramadan was go time. Ramadan was Allah's mercy is descending right now like never before. The gates of Jannah are flung open, and I am calling upon Al-Afu, the most forgiving one. It's time to go with whatever I have right now. It's not time to think about what I wasn't prepared for, or how much Quran I did not read before Ramadan, or the fasting, or none of that is relevant at this point. It's Allahu Akbar, Ramadan is here. Let me do what I can. Let me pace myself now that the month has started in ways that are going to give me the full benefit of the month. So how do we get started off on the right foot? Well, first and foremost, if you look at the Salaf, they paced themselves from the very beginning as to how they wanted to divide that month. They weren't going to just figure it out once they got into it. They looked at where they were, they looked at what they were capable of, and they created a trajectory for themselves. They charted a trajectory for themselves. Where do I want to end up at the end of the month? And how do I build myself to that in a reasonable way? Not one that causes me great stress. Not heavy on the quantifiable part of this, but how do I chart myself up there, right? Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, was someone who was distinguished by his fasting. And it's said about him, and this is outside of Ramadan as well, that he used to fast until he would become very, very lean. Okay? And they would tell him, لو أجممت نفسك, like, if you took care of yourself, put a little bit more, weight on. Why are you fasting so much? And your fasting seems to come in large blocks. The Prophet ﷺ was described as what? That sometimes he was fasting, I'm talking about outside of Ramadan, until you thought that he was always fasting. And sometimes the Prophet ﷺ took a break from fasting until you thought that he was never fasting, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Abu Musa, you seem to have this really intentional schedule that you have yourself on. What is that? And he said, إِنَّمَا يَسْبِقُ مِنَ الْخَيْلِ الْمُضَمَّرَةِ. He said the fastest horses, the ones that always win the races, are the lean ones. And al-mudammara is a very rich word in the Arabic language because it actually speaks to their diet. The Arabs had this whole thing when they prepared their horses for a race of what they would feed the horse before and how they would, how they'd start to take quicker laps to jogging laps to walking and keeping them on a schedule before the race starts. And what would end up happening is that you had sometimes those that weren't very good trainers, you're training your nafs, which is the horse, sometimes not very good trainers, that had horses that were stronger and faster in their nature. They'd go quick and then they'd crash, they'd be overtaken. So they start the race quick and then they get overtaken. Al-mudammara, if you watch a professional race, is that person that's running and you're like, when are they going to burst? And then they slowly start overtaking the rest of the racers. And this is actually what Abu Musa said I'm doing to my soul. SubhanAllah. This is how I treat my soul. I treat it like that horse that has this course. It's a long course there. That 30 days is far away, but so close, because we know that next week we're going to say Ramadan is already disappearing, and we're already in the last 10 nights, and we're already on the 27th. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us a life of acceptance. Allahumma ameen. But we know how this goes every year, right? He's saying, I've already charted it out. I see where the end goal is, and I'm pacing myself. And al-mudammara would eat a very nutritious meal, and they wouldn't eat too heavy. They'd eat something very nutritious and slowly start to tone down. It's like a weight cut for horses, right? Not extreme, tone down before the race starts, and then build themselves back up. And he said, this is how I plan to live my life.
يا صاحي كي تستريح وبث